Well, if you were here last week, I fear that you're going to have a little letdown today, given the dynamic message we heard. We're so grateful for Tyler Jenkins. Would you do something for me to start off with today? Would you stand up if you're able? Just stand up if you're able to stand up. Okay. Let me ask you sort of a personal question. How is your posture today? If I told you to straighten up, what would you do? Straighten up. Shoulders back, head high. Okay, that's some of you got pretty nice posture. You know, it's really hard to judge your own posture, isn't it? Unless you're standing in front of a mirror. So look around you today and look at the posture of those nearby you. Okay. What does their posture say to you? You know, generally when we hold our head this way, what message are we conveying? When we're sort of like this, what are we conveying? When we have a posture like this, what do we say? Back off, right? What about when we're like this? Okay. Just keep that in mind. You can be seated. How's your posture? That's a question which gets addressed on several different levels. Posture is an issue of physical stature, body alignment. I think I told you a few weeks ago, I was one of my first community theater productions that I was in was The Sound of Music, and the dance instructor told me that I had a crooked core, which I found sort of offensive. But our posture is about our spinal position. It's perhaps an issue addressed by a physical therapist or a chiropractic practitioner. But posture is also something more. Posture is a reflection of attitude and outlook. We communicate through our posture. We give messages how we are feeling and what we are thinking through our posture. Our spiritual life can also be revealed through our posture. It is to this aspect of posture that Jesus speaks in this prayer story about a Pharisee and a tax collector. Jesus says two men went up to the temple to pray. One of them was a Pharisee. The other was a tax collector. We remember that a tax collector in biblical days was a crook. He was a person who was a Jew, but he worked for the Roman government. He had a franchise, an area in which he was entitled to collect taxes from people. And he was told by the Romans what the folks owed in taxes, and that anything else he collected from the people over and above what they owed the Roman government was his to put into his pocket. The tax collectors were despised as turncoats and quite honestly considered sleazeballs and dirtbags. I thought about who we might consider the tax collector equivalents of our day. As much as some of us may not like paying taxes, and as much as the good folks of the IRS may get a bad rap, most of them are honest, hard-working public servants whom I don't think we could really label as sleazeballs. I thought about those folks who get rich off of those in desperate financial straits, like the payday lenders. Right? Right up the street here, right? two top executives at Advance America, which is one of the top payday lending entities in the country, based out of our own upstate, came to visit a ministers group I was a part of. This has been a few years ago. One of the ministers in our group had written a letter to the editor critical of the payday lending industry, and they read it and wanted to come talk with us. And after their meeting with us, I do have to say I had a little more respect and appreciation for them. They explained that there was a time when you could go to your local community bank and you were in a tight spot, and by the very signature that you put down, you could get a loan for $100, $500, get you through a tough spot. Anybody tried that lately with SunTrust or TD Bank or Bank of America? They don't do that anymore, do they? So these folks feel like they're meeting a consumer need. I don't know. Whoever the tax collector types of our day may be, we know that when Jesus talks about tax collectors, he's referencing a figure that is wholeheartedly despised by all who would be hearing his story. The other figure in his story is a Pharisee. Now, we like to talk bad about the Pharisees, don't we? Because you see, in our minds, Pharisees are stiff-necked, stubborn-headed Jews who, despite all the evidence, refuse to claim Jesus as their Messiah. That is in reality not a fair assessment, and it's not who Jesus sees the Pharisees to be. The Pharisee, as a character in Jesus' story, in truth, represents the good church people. Any good church people out there today? You know, the ones you can always count upon to be there when the doors are open. The Pharisees volunteer to teach the Sunday school class. They direct the choir. They serve as chairperson of any committee asked. Even take a position on even larger church governing bodies. The Pharisee puts his fair share in the offering plate. The Pharisee pays his taxes, obeys the laws, takes his wife out to dinner on their anniversary, dresses his children well, wears deodorant, and cleans under his fingernails. He shows up to work on time and does his job. You can depend upon him. He's hardworking and dedicated and consistent, and maybe just a little bit angry. Although he will not likely admit it. He does what he's told at work and home and church. He plays by the rules. And he's a little resentful of those who don't. He pays his taxes, but he's getting tired of all that money which seems to go to social programs for those who don't or won't work. He goes to church and sings about God's love, but he sees all those folks who stay in bed on Sundays or go out to the golf course, and he's just a little bit ticked off at them. He still hasn't quite gotten over that his daddy gave his lazy, reckless living younger brother all that money to waste, and then welcomed him back home and had a party for him, and wanted him to come. The one who stayed there on the farm, worked his assets off, trying to keep the family business afloat. That is the Pharisee. That's the Pharisee. So with this story, one more time, Jesus has set us up, hasn't he? He has sent in the Pharisee, who was one of the most respectable people in Judaism of his time, and he has sent into the temple with him this tax collector, who is a mafia-style enforcer who's a bad apple. And in describing the scene, notice what attention and detail Jesus gives us about their position and their posture. The Pharisee stands over by himself and he prays. And he says, God, I thank you that I am not like those other people. I am not a thief. I am not a rogue. I am not an adulterer. And I'm certainly nothing like this tax collector over there. I fast twice a week. I give away a tenth of my income. That is his speech. And he goes on interminably like that. And then the tax collector says, and he won't look up to heaven. He looks at his shoe tips. And all he can muster to pray is, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. And then Jesus says, I tell you this man, the tax collector, went to his house justified, rather than the other, for all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and all who humble themselves will be exalted. Now, most of us won't admit it, because it is, after all, the Bible, and we've been taught not to question or challenge the Bible, because, you see, we're good Pharisees. That's what good Pharisees do. But if we were honest, it peeves us a little bit that Jesus chooses to exalt the tax collector in this story over the Pharisee. Because if we really think about it and are honest, some of us here deep down think that the Pharisee's justified in his opinion. Because maybe it's our opinion, too. It seems to me like there's a lot of self-justifying anger in our world right now. We certainly see it in our political climate. This is the year of the angry voter, right? We see it at our workplaces. Somebody thinks they're not getting a fair shake. We see it sometimes in our homes, among family. Stressful situations instead of drawing folks together, pulls them apart. Everybody has their own opinion and about what's going to make things right or make things better, and their version of who's at fault, right? For how awful things are. We don't think we can live without our self-justifying anger. Because who's going to stand up for our side if we don't? And so it affects our posture. We subtly, if not overtly, position ourselves too often as being better than those who aren't doing things the way we think they should be done. We draw our self-worth from the fact that at least we're better than so-and-so. And we hold tightly to our beliefs that we are right. Even if it means putting a wall between ourselves and those we are called to love. What would happen if we gave up our self-justifying anger? What would happen if we took on the posture of the tax collector in the prayer? Head bowed, knees bent, humble before our God, humble in the Word. What if the image most folks had of Christians was they are a humble people instead of an angry people? To live without self-justification makes us feel vulnerable and naked. But when we think about it, living without a need to self-justify is extraordinarily liberating. As soon as we can accept the fact that we're accepted by a good God, when we can accept that fact that God accepts us and loves us as we are, our need to prove ourselves is over. And to get to that place, Jesus says that we need only 7 words. 7. Words mumbled by the tax collector as he stood at a distance and stared at the ground. God, number 1, have mercy on me. A what? Sinner. The moment we breathe those words and cast our unadorned selves upon God, we experience God's love without condition and limit. Correctly understood and spoken from the heart, that's the most important prayer any of us can ever utter. And in a sense, it may be the only prayer we ever truly need. Why? Because it proceeds from a clear-eyed assessment of our condition as human beings, and more importantly, from our confidence in the character of a God who welcomes sinners. Amen. Even the self-righteous, saint-like sinners. The point of Jesus' story here is simply about grace. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like that guy over there. Right? No, who saved a wretch like me? Me? A wretch? Well, I'm a really nice guy. Everybody loves me. Let's hear it for the nice guys, okay? Even nice guys have their moments. Even nice guys are in need of grace. What Jesus seems to be lifting up is the posture of the humble honesty of the tax collector over the self-justifying anger of the Pharisee. So the word Jesus has for us this morning is that it does matter what our position, that it does not matter, I should say, it does not matter what our position in life may be over and against other human beings. Doesn't matter. It's our position and posture towards God that defines who we really are. The story is told of a man, a highly respected man, who received a promotion to the position of vice president of the company that he worked for. And the promotion went straight to his head. And his head got bigger and bigger. And for weeks, he bragged to anyone and everyone that he was now a vice president. And it drove his wife crazy. And finally, she brought his bragging to an abrupt halt. She was so embarrassed by his behavior when she said to him, "Listen, Bob," she said, "listen, it's not that big a deal, okay? These days, everyone is a vice president. Why, they even have a vice president of peas down at the supermarket." Well, that somewhat deflated Bob, and so he called the local supermarket to find out if this was true. And so he said, "Can I speak to the vice president of peas, please?" And the voice on the other end of the line said, "Of fresh or frozen?" You see, look around you this morning. Look around you. Look around here. Who's the person sitting next to you? Who is the person sitting across the room from you, behind you, or in front of you? Who is that person? Is that person a pillar of the community? Well, could be. We've had some pillars come visit us. Is that person someone that's been recently discharged from the Anderson County Detention Center? It could be. But who are we really?